like, go out and see the world. There was never pressure that we had to come back. And, I think they did instill in us, you are going to be a good, productive person. You are going to be an asset to the world and to wherever you specifically end up. And therefore, inherently, you're going to be an asset if you end up back here. And I do think that human beings want challenge. They want to grow. They want to strive for something bigger. So, if a business is stagnant or just not progressing, it's probably not going to long-term attract the people who can push it to be bigger and better.
Absolutely. And even in our family enterprise and our family office, this year we're doing a big reframe because certain verticals where we acquire businesses have gotten so overpriced that we've said, hey, we're not going to be the guy and gals that say, hey, we're going to keep trying to do the same thing for the next 3 years, knowing that the industry is blown out and that it is a cycle and it's going to come back. We're going to say, what are the skills and talents we have? And where's the opportunity in the market that we could apply those business operating talents to a different opportunity?
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, a podcast for purpose-led entrepreneurs looking to master the art of buying, selling, or optimizing small businesses. Your host, Chris Seegers, founder of Exceptional Companies and author of Selling Main Street, has over a decade of experience starting, buying, and leading successful businesses. He's here to guide you through the complex world of business transactions and growth. Each week, we dive deep with actionable insights, expert interviews, and real-world strategies to activate and equip you to live exceptionally and build exceptional businesses. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Here's your host, Chris Seegers.
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, where we discuss how to buy, build, and eventually sell small businesses. I'm your host, Chris Seegers, and I'm joined by a friend and amazing guest, Jen Livsey. And Jen is part of a family enterprise. She's a really critical part. She's built multiple really impressive businesses. Her background and her family's background, I think, are very unique, and I've really loved getting to know them as friends and just comrades in the space. And they've got ag adjacent businesses as well as very specific ag businesses. But Jen, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Very, very excited to be here, Chris.
For sure. Okay, so we always start with the story because ultimately all this is storytelling. But I'd love if you would just tell our audience about your story because it is very unique. And I think your sibling stories are very unique as well. But tell us how you got into being an entrepreneur and starting East Coast Group and anything along the way.
Awesome. So I grew up, I'm the fifth generation in my family's commercial cattle ranching business, which is headquartered in far rural eastern Colorado. And I, now understand that to be a long line of entrepreneurs. I grew up very, very involved on the ranch, with my entrepreneurial parents and very influenced by entrepreneurial grandparents and extended family. So I feel very unfortunate to, have had that background. I went to ranch management graduate school in Texas, got engaged to a Texan against the wishes of many people, except my grandma, who always thought that I should end up with a Texan. And I ended up, knew I was going to have to stay down there for a while. And so I called a guy I had met who I just identified him immediately as this is a super smart guy who I would like to work with. Happened to work at an ag bank, and he's now the CEO of that ag bank in Texas. And I called him up and said, hey, I want to work for you. I will do anything. And he was like, well, we don't really have any openings right now, but we have this pasture insurance product that no one's really doing anything with. You can work for rice and beans and then try to sell this. And that is the beginning of my experience selling this very specific rancher focused insurance product. I worked for that bank for 8 years and then went out on my own starting in about 2019 with my brother, Charlie Johnson, who is my youngest brother, and then my sister-in-law, Katie Johnson. So there are three owners. And our kind of motto of Eastco is for ranchers, by ranchers, and provide right now risk management tools. And, we pride ourselves on being kind of the demographic we are selling to. We deeply, deeply understand ranching.
By ranchers, for ranchers, and focusing on risk management.
Yeah. And, we definitely pride ourselves on being the demographic we are selling to. We are ranchers. We understand ranching. We like to talk to ranchers. And what I would describe very, very basically, what we do without getting boring, as we, do complicated analysis to turn complex data into useful information. We're, simplifying the complex so that ranchers can make good decisions for the health of their businesses. And that is kind of in a wrap what Eastco Group is.
I love it. Okay, so we've got a few family enterprises on our end. That's why I think I resonate so much with your family. We're 8 siblings. We've got 5 in business. I think all of us will be in business in the next 5 to 10 years. But what makes a family enterprise work? And then I know some families, and I know some families that couldn't make it work, that had maybe 2 generations or 3 generations that worked, and then the 4th or 3rd generation said, hey, this isn't for us. So what are some of the ingredients that you've seen that have worked for you guys, and maybe some of the warnings for other folks that are thinking about getting in business with family?
Well, I'll kind of speak, to the family ranch and then specifically to Eastco. So I think on the family ranch, which again now is going on 120 years, I think our family has done a really great job of instilling a sense that you are part of something much bigger than yourself and something that began before you and will continue long after you. And I think our family has done a good job of, sharing traditions, passing down stories, kind of there are heroes in our family, and those heroes for us. And honestly, shared hardship also helps.
Oh, yeah.
Being miserable and cold and hot and, working physically outside. It really is a bonding experience to share. So I think that's on the ranch side. And I also think our family has, I don't know if we have expressed this, but I do think has done a very good job of what I will refer to as raising kids worthy of empire, passing on values to kids, but then also parallel building a business that's worth working in, raise kids that are going to be worthwhile wherever they end up in the world, but make your business worthwhile to end up at. And I will say, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and all 4 of us are, involved in the ranch today and want to be involved on the ranch. And I know that that's not, a given, particularly in agriculture. So, I give a lot of credit to my parents and, the generations before us that have, kind of set that in place.
I want to dig into that because that was very well said. So raising children that are worthy of the next thing and aren't given the thing, right? So creating the culture and core values, creating good human beings that will actually have the acumen to run the thing. And then also the second point is really well said, that if you have a family enterprise and you have not built it to where it's something that's exciting and is a big enough vision and mission for the next 3 or 4 generations, you will not be successful. And we've seen that probably in a lot of our ag peers where, the parents, they're 3rd generation and they've done the same thing for 40 years and everything's on paper. And they're like, we're not using technology and we're not thinking about this as a business and we're not, it's agriculture and it's a family thing. And then the kids pretty quickly are like, well, I went to school and I learned all these useful, tools that could take us to a whole new level. And we have to, just to stay in agriculture, because agriculture and oil and gas are so similar in that if you aren't evolving daily, you're out. Like this thing is happening so quickly. There's so much downside risk. And so I've seen a lot of my friends, especially in the Valley I grew up in, that are like, this is great. Glad that you and mom want to do this thing, but it's not big enough for me. It's not the thing that we, the vision has to be big enough. So I love that. That is a really great way to articulate that.
Well, thank you. And yes, you know, I think about that. And my parents definitely, instilled in us like, go out and see the world. There was never pressure that we had to come back. And, I think they did instill in us, you are going to be a good, productive person. You are going to be an asset to the world and to wherever you specifically end up. And therefore, inherently, you're going to be an asset if you end up back here. And I do think that human beings want challenge. They want to grow. They want to strive for something bigger. So, if a business is stagnant or just not progressing, it's probably not going to long-term attract the people who can push it to be bigger and better.
Absolutely. And even in our family enterprise and our family office, this year we're doing a big reframe because certain verticals where we acquire businesses have gotten so overpriced that we've said, hey, we're not going to be the guy and gals that say, hey, we're going to keep trying to do the same thing for the next 3 years, knowing that the industry is blown out and that it is a cycle and it's going to come back. We're going to say, what are the skills and talents we have? And where's the opportunity in the market that we could apply those business operating talents to a different opportunity? And we learned that from being in ag and oil and gas, where I saw the volatility of commodities. And I said, look, if you are good at timing, you can work these industries really well. But if you're great at business, you really don't care what the market is doing. You will find an opportunity within those industries that you'll always be able to capitalize on. And so let's get good at the skill of business. And that's what I'm trying to teach our kids and nieces and nephews is, hey, if you guys want to be involved in the family enterprise, this thing is going to look so much different in 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40, 50. Like it will be a totally different thing. But our mission of activating and equipping ourselves and others to live exceptional lives through the marketplace is going to be the same mission. And it's broad enough and big enough that somebody's like, hey, we should do this other thing. And I'm like, awesome. If that's within the core values and culture of what we're doing, then we should absolutely do that. And I think seeing from your parents, if you have an easel that's broad enough that people can paint on, that have different unique abilities, then it's really fun because people don't feel like they're shrunk down and I love doing this, but the family enterprise doesn't do that. It's like, no, let's figure out a way to build something around that person. I love that. So let me ask a different question, because this is something I think we struggle with and most people struggle with. And we talked on initially before we started the podcast. What do you think about balance? So between family and work, and integrating your faith and your family and growing the business. And we're just in a season where probably from 35 years old to 55 years old, you're just in this crazy growth phase. What are some tools or things that you found useful in that?
So I think, to lay the groundwork, my husband is also an entrepreneur. We own gyms in the Denver area. So we both control our own time, which I think there are definitely disadvantages of owning your own companies. There's stress that comes with that, but you do own your own time mostly. You can devote a lot of time to it, but I think that gives us a lot of flexibility. And, I have 4 kids aging from 9 years to 9 months right now. So, I spend a lot of very focused time, whether I want to or not, with my kids, because a 9-month-old doesn't really care if you have something that you have to get done. They're going to demand your attention. And so I think having kids really, really forces you to focus and be productive during the time you have allotted per day to focus and be productive, so that you can really, really focus on them when you're with them. And then I would say, and this is a little bit making lemonade out of lemons. One of my kids had a really big health scare several years ago. And I would say that really put into perspective for me what a real problem is. And it turns out that most things in life are not really big problems. There's only a couple. And so, for me, as long as I can, focus on my faith in Christ, my health, and my relationship with Jay and my kids, I think that foundation can really carry you through a lot of tumultuous times in multiple businesses. So I think, yes, kids actually, they add a lot to your life, but I think they can force a lot of focus as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's tough if you don't have kids. I think your perspective in life is very different because the first, when you have your first kid and you put it to bed and you're like, I have no control if this kid wakes up or doesn't wake up, right? It's the most terrifying thing in life you could absolutely have because it's an innocent kid that you're responsible for and you don't have control. That is really when my faith it became super cemented to say, all right, God, I think I have control over so many things. I really don't. There are some things that I manage, but I fully believe that you have the best interest of this kid and our family. And I trust you and I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to handle whatever happens. But that once you have those health scares, and we've had a few in our family too, if you get sued in business, if you lose a client, if you like all the things that will happen if you stay in business for decades. We had a pretty bad week this week and 3 or 4 things happened that I was really frustrated with. Then I went home and I was like, really meditating and praying over Charlie Kirk's family and being like, none of this stuff is important. I have my wife who I love. My kids are here. We have businesses and good mission work to do. And if that changes tomorrow, that's okay. But I think that lens is really important in business because business will eat your lunch, right? And you're in a coaching program that we've been in, and they've got a concept called the gap and the gain. And I'm rereading this book, 10X is Easier Than 2X, which I think you've read, that Dan Sullivan wrote with a guy named Ben Hardy. But really, he says if you're not in the gain, which is really like looking forward to the horizon, but really celebrating all the progress you've made. If you can't do that as an entrepreneur, you'll have the most miserable business experience of your life because it's a proper perspective. So I think that's so good. And something that I hope we can teach our kids is, hey, if a kid says something mean to you, I know it hurts your feelings, but it's not that big of a deal. But here are some really big things that you should be protective of and avoid and that sort of thing. A question that we love to ask our potential clients is, do you know what your business is worth? And if you sold your business today, would it fulfill your personal and financial goals? If you're a successful business owner, but you don't know when or how to sell your business, and if you've ever wondered what each additional day in your business is actually costing you, we'd love to chat. If you're ready to spend more time with your family, your friends, or traveling, come sit down with our team because when you work with exceptional business advisors, we'll help you build a blueprint to sell your business successfully and help you create, capture, and achieve your dream life. Don't wait for the right time. The time's now. Go ahead and scan the QR code or book a discovery appointment at excoadvisors.com. So let's go back to the EastCo, just doing that enterprise well, because we've talked a little bit about the family ranch, but let's talk about the business that's more specific to the three of you and how you've navigated that.
So I co-own EastCo with my brother and sister-in-law, and, am very, very grateful for the fact that we are very, very different personalities, very different skill sets. And, you could just say, by dumb luck, when we are all meshed together, we are very productive. I think part of this is, and this probably, comes from a family ranch background or a family business background. We don't have a lot of problem with being in conflict. We can really, really get into it with each other. And, my family, maybe also kind of a Western upbringing, we're not the most emotional people. We can take it in that we can, really hash stuff out and then, come back the next day and march forward and be productive. But I will say, to counterbalance this, and this is growth as a business owner, and it goes to another Dan Sullivan book, Who Not How, kind of his delegation philosophy. we brought 2 of our top employees into our leadership team. So there are 5 people on the leadership team, and we meet weekly. We're on an EOS schedule, and Olivia and Pete have brought so much to Eastco. Just their brain power alone, their non-family presence, their kind of an outside presence that make us not be complete animals around each other. I think that they have been a really balancing force. And, I think every business owner, gets scared, like, how much can I tell other people? Can I open up my books? And I would say, about the best thing that has happened to Eastco is including them, at a very, very high level in the management of Eastco. And, I only wish we had done it sooner. I think it's, really, really helped us.
I love it. How I've been asking this question a lot because the word culture gets thrown around a lot, right? Everyone, oh, we have this culture, we have this culture. How would you define culture, like the concept, and then what would that look like specifically to Eastco?
So the best definition of culture I have ever heard, and this sounds kind of cowboy, is how we do things around here. And Eastco instituted, as did the ranch a couple years ago, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so we had to go through, kind of intense soul searching to really define our core values at Eastco, which we have settled upon: best in class, individual initiative, and professionalism. And, those are not just words. We really try to think about everything we do in the business, communicating with clients, hiring people, how do we do everything on our back end? How do we, communicate as a team, really focusing on those. And, those are kind of inherently entrepreneurial characteristics. We want to be a very entrepreneurial organization because, we have a team of agents, and we want them to feel empowered, that they have the tools, the training, that they can go out and provide real value to people that we want to work with. So I think, we have built, I think, a good culture, but that's a continual operation. Is you've got to always be building your culture.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a friend of mine that came on a while back, and I said, without an EOS, without an operating system, you can't have accountability in your culture. If you don't have scorecards for measuring what is best in class, then you actually aren't the culture you say you are. You can say it, but if you're not measuring it and making sure, you will have culture drift on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And that's something I learned from some guys in Midland. In our oil business in Austin, we have part of our culture and mission statement. The core thesis is humans flourishing. And I've mentioned this before. I think this is really, like, as a business owner, that's what we're all doing. How do we help somebody flourish? Our clients, our team, the management team, et cetera. But when we came up with this thesis, and it was out of a book called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels by a guy named Alex Epstein. When we came up with this framework, I said, this is cool. Like, I love this, but how are we measuring this? If we say we want our team to flourish, like, we need to think about their emotional, their physical, their spiritual, their financial, let's measure those things. And when we took it from that step to that step, it changed the entire culture, because now we have a pastor that comes in and we just have philosophical conversations with our team to make sure everybody's doing okay spiritually, whatever their faith is. We have a trainer that comes in and does digital training for all of our team, whoever wants to be involved. Hey, if you want to be more fit physically. And then we have other options on the emotional side. And that really, my partner, Ted, I have so much respect for him, because instead of stopping at the okay, this is cool, right? We said, no, if we are this culture, we will do this every day. And we will know if we're failing on a weekly basis or not based on the scorecard. So I love that. So let's talk about a story of either failing or extreme success. I prefer one of failure that you guys have had, that you're like, hey, we were doing this thing and we didn't do it well. and this is what we're doing different, or just a great story that you've had in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I would say it is probably a genetic trait in my family to have what I would call pathological optimism. So we
I love
tend
it.
to really like not focus on to the point of forgetting about, you things that went wrong or failures other than like taking, lemonade from that. Like, how did we get better? And, there have been a lot of, the ranch has a long history of things going wrong. And I mean, animals going wrong, weather going wrong, et cetera, markets going wrong. And, and I would say in East Co, we're really dealing with it live right now. We're in a very, very heavily regulated line of work, and East Co probably principally because my sister-in-law is maybe the most detail-oriented person I have ever met. We have always been very compliance focused, very tech focused. We want things to be correct. About 2 weeks ago, we got an announcement from the government of, essentially a whole new set of regulations and paperwork that we are going to have to, announce and roll out and accomplish. And, that's not necessarily great news. I attributed it, and I told this to the team. I mean, it's like Southwest coming out and be like, bags no longer fly free. Like,
For sure.
no one likes that. Yeah. So, but, that is reality. And, taking this opportunity, how can we be the best positioned agency in the nation to do this? What systems and technologies and communication can we have in place to make, this as smooth as possible? And, I think we're really focused on that right now. And, on the pathological optimism, I hope a year from now, I barely even remember it because we worked so hard to, make it happen as well as it could happen.
Yeah, I love that. That has been a mental model for us, which is, I believe, why we're successful. We look at control the controllables, and as soon as we understand something can't be controlled, we're like, move on. We're moving on. Like, let's go do the things we need to do. And then the other mental model is act, learn, adjust, ALA. So we're constantly saying like, hey, let's go act, let's learn very quickly, and let's adjust it very quickly. I mean, it could be in like a daily perspective. And so I think that allows you to minimize mistakes because it's the measure small, measure often concept. Like the more quickly we can measure and iterate, the quicker. And also you also teach your team, once again, like what's important and what's not, that lens. Hey, this is the ocean. We're in the ocean and we don't get to control the waves. But we've got a boat and we've got a rudder and we can start doing some things that are going to be useful to where we're heading. That's so good. So if you're a 20-year younger Jen and you're coming into 2026 and you're looking at AI changes, technology, there's so much noise. What's the economy going to do? Politically, what's going to happen? What are the tariffs going to do? If you could give some advice or mental models that you think would be useful to that younger person, what would some of your top models be?
I am probably a big believer in, the saying, you are like the 5 people you most hang out with. And I think being around people that you want to be like, and then to put that in a business perspective, being around businesses that you want to be like is very important in your life. One of our closest ranch family friends, my dad knows, is best friends with him. I always think of this guy, he ranches in Nebraska, absolutely unafraid to invite himself to somebody else's ranch that he thinks is doing a good job, to call him up. And, my family is very much like that as well. Be bold in putting yourself in contact to rub shoulders with people you admire, build that peer network. I have a set of girlfriends who are very entrepreneurial, dealing with family and running businesses. And, that group has been invaluable to me. I am part of a group of ranchers who, are the ranches that, I admire and want to be like. And I think, on a bigger, but similar theme as that, put yourself in a position to learn something every day. Be in a position that you are dumber than, the people in the room, than the podcast you're listening to, purposefully do that so that you can raise your own bar a little bit.
I love that. Okay. So as we wrap up, I try to wrap up with 2 questions, but before we go into those last 2 questions, I've done a bad job of making sure that people can find my guests and can interact with them and like them and love on them and communicate. Where should people find you? If they're like, oh my gosh, I have a similar thing that I want to talk to Jen about, where can they interact with you?
So my company's website, eastcogroup.com is one. And then my family's ranch site, which is flyingdiamondcattleranch.com would be the two places.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the closing questions. What is a tool, book, resource, podcast, something that you've learned over the past 6 months that you're like, this is just, above and beyond. This is so incredible. I want to share this one thing. And then I've been closing with, I think last week it was a really heavy week for our country. We had some big attacks on freedom of speech and civility that I am actively fighting against. We should all be actively fighting against. But tool or resource, and then what's some optimism, some encouragement, you're like me. I don't have a bad day usually. I'm very optimistic and I'm like, hey, we can solve these problems. So let's end with those 2 questions.
All right. Well, I will, kind of go through different formats of resources in the last 6 months that I've found really useful. A book, Unreasonable Hospitality, is a book about a guy in the restaurant industry, but truly one of the best business books I've ever read. Highly, highly recommend that.
So good.
Invest Like the Best podcast is awesome in general. There was a recent one about Alpha School, which was just kind of mind-blowing. I think education in America and the world is on the cusp of like a huge change. And I think this dude, who I can't remember his name right now, is super smart. So highly recommend that. My best source for all things kind of AI and tech related is a site called every.to. And they have a podcast, they have a blog, and they have several AI tools that I have personally found very useful. And it kind of walks you from like complete dumb into slightly less dumb on AI. So I appreciate that. And then I really set a goal this year to deepen my biblical knowledge.
Awesome.
Grew up, going to church as a Christian, but I would say my tradition did not give me the chops I think I need to have. So I've been using Bible Project, which is an app and a series of podcasts to like really, really deep dive, like a college class, into various books of the Bible. So I've liked that. And then as hope for, optimism going forward, I too have just been very, very affected, more so than I predicted last week, of Charlie Kirk's death. And I think my hope and optimism is that, sometimes it takes something really deep and profound and sad to wake people up. And I think our country is, that might actually be happening. And, I think stick to the basics. Love your people. Be a light to those around you. It matters. Affect what you can affect is positively.
Yeah. We had a big discussion with a peer group around national politics, and I was like, guys, look, if we're not doing this well in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in our city, let's not focus on the national. Like, how do we do this well in our families and then concentric circles? Are we bringing the joy and light and salt to our family and then to our church and then to our business and, whatever those concentric circles are, because that's what we're called to do. There's a lot of crazy chaos going on, and I think we can, on a long perspective, long-term affect that stuff. And I'm part of that movement, but let's do it well here. That's so well said. Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is going to serve people really well, and we'll have to do it again in kind of 6 to 12 months, see where you're at then. But I appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you on down the road.
Loved it. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Exceptional Companies Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you liked this show, please reach out through our website, www.excoadvisors.com, for free tools to order a copy of Selling Main Street, or to sign up for our free webinar on how to sell your Main Street business.